Hi there, how we doing out in Twitch land? My name is James Spencer. I'm a solutions architect here at AWS, and welcome once again to Howdy Partner. What is Howdy Partner, you might ask? Well, if you missed the banners at the beginning of the show, Howdy Partner is our weekly show we do here at AWS, where we bring on some of our partners that are part of the AWS Partner Network. We talk to them, we talk about their solutions, what makes them different, what makes them great, how they can help you, and we dive in deep about every little thing that they bring to the table in the cloud world. And today is another one of our special SaaS series shows. And of course, as usual, my good friend and colleague, Anthony, will be joining us today. Anthony, let's bring you up. How are you doing today, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm doing great, James. Always a pleasure to be on Howdy Partner. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. You're the resident SaaS expert, so these shows would not be quite as good as they would without you, for sure.
You make me blush.
So Anthony actually does a show in the mornings. It's, what is it called exactly? Building
SaaS on AWS. Yeah.
Nice. So he's double booked today. He's a superstar. So with that, who are we going to talk to today, Anthony? SoftwareOne is what the title says.
Yeah, so this is going to be a really interesting episode, hopefully for everybody. We have a great partner, SoftwareOne, coming on. As you may be aware, and you can probably see from my title here, I work for a team called the AWS SaaS Factory. And the SaaS Factory is everything SaaS on AWS, right? We try to be kind of the one-stop shop, providing reference materials, information, best practices, reference architectures, and solutions to the community at large. But we're part of the AWS Partner Network, part of the APN. And in that process, or as a part of being that, we also have and have produced a program called the AWS SaaS Competency Partner Program. And SoftwareOne is one of those partners, a relatively new one to our program, but they've been around AWS a long time and are an amazing partner to have. So I can't wait to have a great conversation with them today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And then just for everyone else, to give a little background, the competency program is one of our designation programs, differentiation programs we have at AWS. So there's kind of different levels of what we consider differentiation, validation. We have the foundational kind of level, and then we have kind of the service specialist level, and then we have what we call the competency level, which is kind of the cream of the crop, the people that know 100%, 110% of what they're talking about. So they're vetted, that it's not just their word, we've gone through various reviews, controls, et cetera, case studies, their work speaks for themselves. So with that, I would like to bring on some of our friends from SoftwareOne. Let's go ahead and bring on Alex and Ian. How are you doing today, my friends?
Pleasure to be here. Thanks very much for having us, James. Really, really looking forward to this evening. Yes, it's quite an unpleasant evening here in the UK, so I'm quite happy to be sat behind my desk.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. So for everyone else in the world, for me, it's 2 p.m. I still have 3 or 4 hours of work to go. Our friends, they're burning the midnight oil here across the pond, as they say, I believe. Cool. And Ian, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing well, James. Thanks for having us on today. It's a real pleasure to be here. And Anthony, great to catch up again. And thanks for the support from the SaaS Factory team. Should we kick off some introductions, maybe? Is that?
Yeah, for sure.
Place to start. So for everyone, I'm the Global Alliance Lead at SoftwareOne. I've been at SoftwareOne for about 4 years, responsible for the health of the AWS partnership, the go-to-market planning, and overall partner relationships. Probably been working in alliances now for about 12 years, and with AWS specifically for 8.5 years. And that has been a rocket ship of growth, I can tell you. It's like hold on tight when you start working with AWS, and a great place to be. Before that, I was in IT project management. So I've got the war wounds and the scars for working on various IT projects over the years. One of the things I do love about my job is like getting involved in some of the complex customer conversations. And whenever I get to speak to SaaS customers, it's always a pleasure. And it's definitely my favorite type of customer. So really excited about being here today.
Nice. Awesome. And Alex.
Yes, I'm the CTO for our service business at SoftwareOne. I've been in the industry a little over 20 years, hence the grey patches, and I've worked in that time pretty much across the gamut of the industry. So I kind of started on client side, working for big energy companies as an engineer, then worked in some consulting and vendor side, where I was actually working like on microsystems and things like that. And then the last 12 or so years, I've been working in architecture, mostly working in that MSP and cloud space. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be an architect and like build buildings and skyscrapers and things like that. And through one fate or another, I ended up building IT systems instead. But one of the things I always really enjoy, because I've got a couple of friends that are neighbors and they're architects, and it's amusing to have a conversation with them about the similarities, and we always end up back at the same thing. It's always about translating customer requirements and business problems into visions and technical solutions. So we act as that translator in the middle, which is quite a lot.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. So definitely, we're going to be talking SaaS today. And I always like to kind of kick off the, as one of my friends says, play dumb and pretend like you don't know it. And I said, yeah, I'll play dumb. Yeah, that's it. So what is SaaS? So my definition, I always try and give to like my grandparents or, someone a little less technical. SaaS, the easiest way is, some sort of thing you log into on the internet, like Gmail, or that's the easiest explanation I always give. Something like that, where you just type in your credentials and boom, you have an application to work with. And it just gives you whatever you're looking for, like maybe an AI chat bot, maybe, like I said, an email service. But it kind of goes a little bit different. So I always like to try and hear what everyone's kind of definition is of SaaS and with regards to themselves. So I guess, Alex, let's start with you. What would you say is the definition of SaaS?
So we simply look at it as a way of delivering software over the internet instead of installing it and running locally on a traditional computer or a server in a data center, whatever. Ian, you actually have a brilliant example that you like to talk about on this front with your taxi company.
Yeah, I remember speaking to a taxi company a few years ago, and their business model was really shipping out CDs that the taxi companies used to install either on a desktop under their desk or in a clunky server in the back office somewhere. And they ship out a CD with their latest version every 12 months or so. And they never knew whether their customers were installing it and upgrading. They were taking calls from customers and not understanding which version they were on until they could qualify. So there was a lot of problems with that model. But when we started engaging with them about cloud and SaaS, you're looking at taking that software and making it available over the internet in a browser or an app. And suddenly, instead of having the customer having to look after the application, the customers just logging in and getting all of that functionality and goodness from the app directly. So yeah, ultimately any application that you consume on the internet is probably some version of SaaS. And I think it's one of the key points I always think is it doesn't necessarily just have to be a software company that's a SaaS provider. It's also lots of enterprises making software for themselves that they either use internally or selling to customers themselves. So it's quite a wide ranging. It's really hard to find a SaaS company because they always hide themselves in the vertical that they're solving their business problems for their customers. So it's not, you can't look up, are you a SaaS company? You've got to really go hunting in the vertical and know who to find them.
Yeah. And speaking of definitions, chat, I'd love to hear what you think. Maybe let us know what you think your definition of SaaS is. And also I invite you, any questions, comments, anything, big or small, in deep or just surface level, just throw it in the chat. Let us know. We'll engage with you. We're here for you. And I've heard, we'll get to it in a little bit after we talk a little bit more about SoftwareOne. I think they prepared some sort of game for us today. But I'll let them speak about that specifically.
So we did actually prep a little game, which hopefully should be a bit of fun for this evening for everybody. So there's probably two parts to the story here, right? So we're on Twitch tonight, or today, or this morning, or wherever you are. I know we might even have a couple of people from Australia who I think it's about 7 a.m. over there. And for us, there are two sides to it, right? So on Twitch, it originally got popular as a gaming platform, and we felt it wouldn't be right to do the session today without some kind of a gaming element to it. And we did some digging, and it turns out 1.6 billion people across the world play bingo every year, right? Another thing, the second part to it is for SoftwareOne, something that's really important to us is to help our wider communities through things like we have a SoftwareOne Gives Back program. We get free volunteering days for everybody in the company to go and help out in our local communities, do fundraising, these kind of things. And so we thought, why not kind of combine the two? And maybe if you want to just bring up the screen briefly, I'll quickly talk through this with James.
Sure.
So we thought, why not have the chat play along on a little bit of a game with us today, and perhaps win some donations for their favorite charities. So if I just jump to this, we've actually got $1,000 of charity donations to give away this evening. So hopefully everybody on the chat is familiar with bingo, but if you're not, don't worry. I'll quickly, briefly kind of talk through it just now. So what we're going to do is, if you haven't played this before, a bingo card has 4 lines on it, in this case, with 4 boxes on each line. It's really, really simple. Just listen along to the conversation this afternoon or this evening. And as you hear any of the things that we talk about, just cross them off your list. And when you get to the end of a line, please just shout in the chat, bingo, and then maybe chuck in the line number that you've just finished. And the very first person who finishes each line, we're going to give $100 to their chosen charity. And then when we eventually get to, in theory, we'll get to the end of the bingo exercise. You should have filled your entire table. And then the 2 people who type full house in the chat, we're going to give $300 to their chosen charities. So we thought this was just a really nice way to make it a little bit fun for folks in the chat. As it's a game, there's always some rules. You know, we got to bring the rules, but it's really simple. We've got 2 million registered charities that you can choose from because we use a platform called Benevity, which is fantastic for making donations. And even if you, even if you aren't part of the exercise today, I'd encourage you to check out that site. It's fantastic. Chris, who's in the chat today, if you are one of the winners, you just send Chris an email with your Twitch details, your contact details, and who you'd like to make the donation to, and we will arrange that and then send you all the details back. And then the last thing is just to kind of spread it around a bit. We're going to limit it to like 1 bingo line win for each person, but you can win bingo and you can still win full house. So that way you've still got 2 chances to win through the course of the game, even if you've won 1. So just a little bit of fun. So what I would encourage everybody to do now is to take a bit of a screenshot right now. We'll leave it up on the screen for a minute. And if you can work your way through this as we're going through today, then you can make some fantastic money for your favorite charities.
Nice. I already see at least 1 box we could mark off.
Yeah, what a fantastic idea as well. Thank you for doing this, and obviously giving back to the community too. It's so important. We at AWS feel very similar, right? I think we're kindred spirits when it comes to that. So absolutely kudos, and thank you so much for doing this. It's fun.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Core values very closely aligned, so great time.
Absolutely.
Right.
Great.
Hope you've got your screenshots, guys. We're about to kick off.
And we'll come back to that every so often. So if you did miss it, I mean, why? First of all, second of all, don't worry too much. We'll pop it up every so often. Cool. So with that, who are SoftwareOne and what do you do? What movie was that? Oh yeah, who is my daddy? Who is your daddy? What is SoftwareOne and what do they do? Yeah.
Slightly different context. So SoftwareOne, we like to think of ourselves as a leading global provider of software, cloud, data, and AI solutions. We think of ourselves as redefining how organizations build, buy, and manage everything in the cloud. So everything we do is about maximizing the value of technology. So organizations, so they can achieve their best possible outcomes. They're driven to deliver for their organizations, but we know, every organization is facing the same challenges. They have finite resources to execute and to innovate, and that's where we come in. So we have methods by which we systematically optimize customers' IT environments. We produce savings to then fund the technology that our customers need to transform and keep on transforming. Ian, do you want to just maybe talk a wee bit more about SoftwareOne?
Yeah, so I've got the obligatory by the number slide. So as you can see, we're a global organization, as Alex said, over 60 countries, and that gives us access to over 65,000 customers in lots of different verticals of lots of different sizes, from the big globals all the way down to SMB organizations in different countries. We work primarily, a lot of our partners we work with are ISVs. We probably transact and sell software for over 7,000 ISVs, and we work quite closely with about 450 of those using AWS Marketplace and helping them adopt cloud marketplaces in general. As an AWS partner, I think as myself as the alliance person, I'm really proud of SoftwareOne. We're a premier partner. That's the highest tier. We've invested in the time in 11 partner competencies, including SaaS, migration, modernization, security, DevOps. As you mentioned, James, that they're not easy to get. You've got to have customer references. You've got to go through 4-hour external audits, technical reviews. So we're really pleased about that. And the other one is the managed services partner, which we have that we get reviewed on that every year, and that we're about to reset that at the end of the year. 2-hour audit, and it's a validation in itself that we're delivering quality services for our customers and AWS. So that's the obligatory and by the number slide.
Nice. And speaking of those competencies, like I said, those are kind of the cream of the crop, top thing. I know when I get a competency application, it's both exciting and kind of like that's a lot of work. Like even as a reviewer, like I have to go through documents and checklists and whatever, but ultimately, like, it's really exciting when I get to we get to stamp that approval and give that badge. So I guess before we kind of continue on, about the SaaS competency, like, since you've attained it, what kind of value has it had for SoftwareOne, and what have you seen come out of that program?
Yeah, so I think first of all, as you say, it's the validation that we're able to help ISVs and SaaS providers transform their business. I think the SaaS team have really been one of the most proactive teams in AWS in helping us with the competencies since we've started. The SaaS factory methodology really helps us define and underpin our next generation ISV program, which we've brought to market. So our program closely aligns with a lot of the key points and processes in the SaaS factory program. And then the support we've had with the go-to-market planning and the help we've got around the building our marketing messages really strong. And then last point for me is the access to partner funding options as being a SaaS competency partner, which helps us really at the early stages of engaging with customers. When we're in that early stage envisaging, how do you get to SaaS? Normally those types of early engagements, there's not a lot of funding for, whereas the SaaS competency does provide that to allow us to engage certain types of customers to get them on that journey without having to overly invest themselves. And I think those, for me, are the key points.
I think we've always had a brilliant relationship with AWS, and especially even more so since we became a premier tier partner. Like, just fantastic support across the board. But I'd say since we became a SaaS competency partner, I'd almost argue we've had even more. Helping us to accelerate the SaaS business, spreading our message, not just inside of AWS, but to the wider market, giving us opportunities like this is fantastic. They've also helped enablement of our internal teams as well, and how to position SaaS and everything around that space. And I think lastly, and it touches back to what both of you chaps have already said around, it's not easy to get these competencies. And so I think when we walk into a customer, it gives us immediate credibility with those customers. It's really because AWS, as you said, James, they're validating the quality of the service that we're providing. And so customers know that they can trust us.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. Anthony,
Yeah, I was just going to mention. Well, thank you so much for those kind words, guys. I really, really do appreciate it. And I was sweating there a little bit because when James asked that question, it's like, okay. But no, it's really great to hear, and I'm glad that we've been able to really truly be a partner with SoftwareOne, right? And I think that's what it really comes down to. We look at our competency partners as true partners, somebody that we can work with hand in hand together into the future, growing your business, which then of course helps grow AWS business as well. At the end of the day, it's all about our customers and helping them to achieve what they're looking for for their businesses, and in particular for SaaS. So thank you so much for applying, for being an awesome partner, and can't wait to see what else you have to present to us today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. So yeah, we talked a whole bunch about AWS partners and SoftwareOne as it fits into there. So why don't we move on to talking about SoftwareOne itself? What does SoftwareOne deliver to us? Like, how can they help us? How can I get on the phone with them and say, hey, build me some sort of awesome piece of programming?
So actually, well, you mentioned programming, but it's even more than that, right? So I feel a bit privileged because SoftwareOne just have this absolutely amazing breadth of capabilities, and like super comprehensive solutions covering like all different aspects of digital transformation, and really kind of the modern IT world. We cannot possibly go through everything on the show. If we did, we'd probably need another 2 hours, and then everybody would be bored and fast asleep, especially for people in the UK. So I'll maybe just give you a little subtle flavor of some of the key areas that we touched on. The history of the organization, it grew from a core capability over 20 years in IT portfolio management, software licensing, procurement. But since then, we've really broadened those capabilities tremendously. We have a digital workplace practice that's got loads of success stories from customers, including some fantastic Amazon Connect outcomes. Maybe we should talk about that later. Our cloud services teams focus on things like migration, modernization, operation of customer solutions. We've got over 1,500 developers in the organization who help customers with application development, transformation, modernization of applications, greenfield applications as well. And on that app side, we even have deep expertise and some dedicated services for some business critical applications. So things like SAP, ServiceNow. And lastly, I don't think anybody's allowed to do any kind of show of any kind without talking about data and AI. So we also actually have a fantastic and really deep data and AI expertise to the point where AWS invited us in December last year to be one of the launch partners for the Generative AI Center of Excellence. So that was a massive kudos for us, I think. But I'm going to flip your question around slightly, and for me, it's actually more important than what we offer to our customers is how we work with them. So we believe our approach here is a wee bit unique. We like to call it optimize to transform. And if you look at a traditional business approach, right, to investment, innovation, whatever, the discussion is usually on the basis of, right, you give me X and I'm going to invest it in Y, and then I promise later on down the line I'll save you or gain you Z. Or Z, I suppose, as we're on US time this evening, in the long run, right? But not only are there no guarantees of a return on investment, but the CFO then has to find that funding up front in the short term in order to be able to deliver that. And the way we look at it at SoftwareOne is literally like almost the reverse of that. So we like to help customers to optimize up front on their IT and their licensing spend, save the money now, so that they can then reinvest that to fund their innovation project. So it's literally a total shift in mindset from spend to innovate and into self-funded innovation. And if you do it really well, which we have done with many customers, and you do it iteratively, you trigger this kind of a flywheel effect that provides ongoing innovation. You combine that with ongoing rationalization and optimization to fund future phases of innovation, and this becomes an ongoing positive cycle. If I give you a really good example of this, we've been working exactly like this with one of the big four organizations over the last couple of years, and we helped them to save something in the region of $12 million in that time that they've been able to then reinvest in innovation. So far better to be spending your money in the right places.
I just want to double down on that because I think it's such an important point, right? That ability to go in and assist a customer from the beginning to not ask for additional funds, right? To really show them how they can save on what they're already doing with AWS, because so many customers that we see are frankly overspending, right? They're overpaying for either certain, maybe extra compute that they don't need, or who knows what it may be. But there's usually areas that you can dig into to find those extra dollars that are already being spent, and then applying that to this digital transformation, moving towards SaaS, is a really powerful thing. And one thing that I think that you've talked about a little bit here too, is that it's not just about the technology. We're all engineers. We have engineering backgrounds here. We love to talk about the technology, but SaaS is so much more than that. It's so business focused, and it is a business model at its heart. So affecting that transformation is just so key for customers. And this approach that you have is pretty impressive.
Yeah, Anthony, I think it's exactly the message that we see resonating with a lot of customers. Even just optimizing, we're taking the FinOps approach, people, process, tools into their cloud environments can, identify lots of savings. But then our skill is superpowers is really around the license management and optimization. So whether it's SAP, Oracle, Microsoft licensing, we typically are able to rip apart those larger agreements and save organizations quite considerable sums, which can be used to invest. And it's much easier to reinvest in existing IT budget than it is to go and ask a CFO for more money that they don't want to dish out. So
that's one of your major. Sorry, go ahead now. Yeah. No, that's one of your major differentiation points as well, right? When we're talking about even the partners that do work directly as from an SI perspective or a systems integrator perspective with customers, the fact that you are coming also from the product side, the licensing side, does give you a pretty big heads up as well in trying to find those costs. So that's a great differentiator for SoftwareOne.
Yeah, and we know that AWS loves a flywheel, so you can just as easily apply this flywheel concept to SaaS, where an organization can look to transform their business model, looks at the product, the strategy, the routes to market. Then you move to enhancing the customer experience with new features and services. You accelerate your adoption into SaaS and cloud generally. Frees up money for innovation, adding new services and features so that you can increase your pace of innovation. And then obviously that will pay out with, ideally more customers, maximizing your ROI and profitability, bringing down the cost of customer acquisition, and ultimately feeding back into the model to reinvest and add new features. Again, very, very relevant in that SaaS environment, we feel.
Yeah. And just to kind of close out that topic of how we work with customers, our customer's journey always starts with finding that kind of mutual understanding of their aspirations. So specifically for ISV customers, that's understanding where they are today, what their business, their technical outcomes they're looking to achieve, and then using our next-gen ISV methodology, which Ian kind of touched on a wee minute ago, to help bridge that gap in the way that's best for them. So obviously, depending on where those ISVs are today, their journey is always going to be slightly different. But we do typically see a path towards SaaS, and we'll actually talk a little bit about that in a bit. And that path can be as narrow as how do you technically achieve transformation? How do you modernize their applications? But as wide as helping customers to commercially transform their products, to also execute change management processes inside of their own business. I think you nailed it, Ian, when you said like the people and process side. The path to SaaS is as much a people and process exercise or problem as it is a technical problem. It's a total business transformation.
Cool. So with that, do we want to talk about Like, so do we have some stats? I believe we have some stats on the next slide, talking about what kind of software will be consumed, and what are we going to say about that? Like 86% of all software will be consumed by SaaS in 2026. That's a lot, and I mean, I believe it because, like, one thing I always think of, there it is. My girlfriend, she would always be like, "Oh, we need to download an app for, you know, this store or this company or whatever." And I get to the point where I'm like, I have 70 different apps for, you know, the same thing. Like, to buy concert tickets, I have like 7 different apps. So it makes sense to me that a set, you know, 86% will all be SaaS. That totally makes sense. I don't know whether some part of me is like, maybe it's too much, and some part of it's like, maybe, you know, but it's true. It's just, that's the way that things are going.
I think it's a pretty shocking number, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Anthony.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a pretty shocking number to a lot of ISV companies out there that are traditional software product developers. And when they see that number, they very much realize that, you know, the entire market is moving in this direction. So there's certainly some FOMO that comes about when you see that kind of number. But it's really important that, one, AWS is aligned, and then our partners are aligned, and then our customers are aligned, that we're all going in the same direction.
Yeah, totally. I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, we built this next generation ISV framework program, really to help those organizations get started. You know, we start right at the beginning with envisaging to start, you know, how are they going to transition to this new operating model? You know, we bring that expertise, as Alex mentioned, to help them with that technical roadmap, and then we deliver the implementation and then whatever managed services they need in the background. And again, one of the other things that makes SoftwareOne unique with this program is we also, you know, we've got 65,000 customers who want to buy software. So we can really help those ISVs get to market, and with go-to-market support, and get listed on cloud marketplaces like AWS Marketplace, and go co-selling together. So I think the program holistically, we feel can benefit ISVs at whatever stage of the journey they're at, because, you know, 86% does sound high, but if you think about the demand from the customers and then the demand from the ISVs, there's a lot of benefits for the ISVs, a lot of benefits for the customers by you know, moving to this SaaS model.
Totally agree. I think there's two contexts here as well, isn't there? Because you've got the SaaS as delivered to consumers, end users. Exactly as you're saying, James. Like, I know the frustration. I absolutely love going to gigs. I go to many gigs in a year, and so I have all the apps for virtually every one of the ticket resellers that we've got in the UK. And it is a bit of a frustration, and it's definitely there's a pathway going there nowadays. But then there's the enterprise IT side as well. You know, you've got your enterprise consumers. In fact, actually, why don't we just talk just briefly about that? If we look at from a client perspective in those businesses, those users want the same experience that they get on their application, on their phone at home, you know, as they do when they go into the office. Nowadays, they don't expect to be using, like, I'll give you an example. I used to work, I mentioned earlier on, I grew up working for an energy company when I first started my career. And we literally had like green screen terminals, virtual green screen terminals. There's no way in hell that anybody in this day and age is going to put up with that. And so they want to be able to work, you know, multi-device and mobile. I want to be able to, like, I've got my phone floating around here. I want to be able to scan my expenses on my mobile app and then fill in the details when I'm sat on my laptop browser while I'm sat at my desk. So we want that same experience, and it to be kind of like kind of fluid. It shouldn't matter where I am or what device I'm using. I can still get access to whatever the applications of my enterprise needed. And then the IT teams in those organizations, they don't want to maintain basic non-core applications all day. You know, is your HR system your USP? Is it adding value to your bottom line? No, not really. So why do you want to manage that? You know, the other example would be how many organizations these days are running their own email servers. You know, that market has consolidated down. So I think if I'm going to totally steal from the parlance from AWS, totally undifferentiated heavy lifting with all these traditional applications. And that might be a slight wink to the chat, undifferentiated heavy lifting.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, I was like, that seems familiar. I think I saw that word earlier. I just want to chime in real quick. I just thought of this now that you mentioned that. Perfect example. When I go to the dentist's office, they have a piece of software that has all my charts, has everything. The dentists don't want to deal with that stuff. They don't want to, deal with the program. They just say, hey, I need a program. And then in the end, depending on the SaaS that they use, if they give permission to like my primary care physician and they're using the same piece of software, they can see the notes that my dentist made and vice versa and blah, blah, blah. So say my doctor is giving me a bunch of prescriptions and the dentist is going to put me under anesthesia, and then they go, oh, wait, don't do that because they got that information. And like you said, it's cross-platform, it's cross-business, it's cross all this stuff. I hadn't thought of that example until you just mentioned something like that right now.
Yeah.
And to further that, right? That dentist office doesn't probably have an IT staff, right? They don't have a bunch of people that they can throw at this kind of problem. Even to produce or to deploy software onto AWS takes experience, takes expertise to do. Yep. So that, again, that undifferentiated heavy lifting that SaaS removes really allows these companies to be able to purchase software that's there, it's ready for them, it's at will, essentially. Many cases, it's a subscription-based model, which is really important as well. And it kind of turns the whole productization of software on its head a little bit, because you're no longer just delivering software if you were to produce software and set it out there. Instead, you're actually having to now think like a service, right? And that's a pretty big change for a lot of businesses, because this as a service thinking is almost more like a restaurant, right? Where you have to provide more than just the product that you're giving to your end users, the food in this case. It's how are you serving them, right? Are you being attentive to them? A lot goes into this that's above and beyond just a piece of software and say, hey, you can install this on your own systems and go. So it's a very big difference.
And your dentist office also, he's not going to want to go out there and find thousands of dollars to invest in a new IT system if he can go for a subscription-based model. So that CapEx to OpEx move is happening in large businesses just as much as it's happening in small, or vice versa. And also, if we use your dentist as another example, he doesn't want to be caught by all of the regulatory stuff that's going on at the moment that's massively exploding, right? So he has to worry about today, what does he do with the dental records, with medical records of people? Actually, if he's storing that data in a SaaS platform, he's offloading risk, right? So he's offloading risk around security. I don't have to worry about the responsibilities of that data protection on the underlying platform. I always love the model that AWS utilizes, in the cloud and of the cloud. It's just it summarizes it really nicely. So the SaaS vendor is then protecting the data, looking after the data, meeting regulatory requirements, but also, and maybe this doesn't apply to the dentist office unless he's got a queue outside. But he doesn't have to worry about scalability, right? If you're a large organization, you pay as you grow. So you're also offloading the risk of growth. If your business suddenly explodes and you're using SaaS, that's cool, because the SaaS vendor theoretically has built a multi-tenant platform that's gonna cope with that explosion of utilization.
Yeah, you're not going to have to go out and buy a new service to rack in a data center if you need to suddenly add another 200 users because you're expanding or merging with another organization. And that same point, if you're using SaaS, then you're not hiring, racking servers in the data center. So it can help with your carbon footprint and sustainability pledges that you may have. So, there's a lot of benefits from a client by offloading that infrastructure piece and allowing yourselves to, focus on business value.
Absolutely.
I didn't even, and speaking of your offloading the risk, I didn't even think of that like consciously. As part of those validations that we do at AWS, a big part of that is, how are you storing your data? How are you protecting it? Are you SOC 2 compliant? Are you et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And I always think of that from the AWS validation side to the partners, but I didn't even think of that as another, do we want it to be safe? We want it to be taken care of, but I didn't even think of it from the customer side to where now they don't have to worry about that because AWS and SoftwareOne has done that for them. I didn't even consider that from the, the consumer perspective. So that's a good thought, a good take. I like that.
I like in the chat, by the way, I see Cyrus is nudging people around the bingo. Somebody might want to be looking at line 1 and looking for a donation, I think. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
We're going to wake people up in a minute, hopefully, Alex.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so there's a whole lot of massive values from the client side, and I think we all kind of get that as consumers as well. But we got a little comment in the chat. We got a bingo. Yeah, there we go. But then there's also the ISV side. Like, why, Ian? You probably can talk to this because I think you've got loads of experience in this space.
Yeah. So I think we're talking about a new business model. Ideally, a lot of ISVs would have had their sales teams going out and they're selling perpetual licenses that the customers would install on their servers. So that those perpetual licenses you're selling once a quarter, once a year as one-time lumpy fees. It's very, with SaaS, you're moving into this recurring revenue model where you're paying per user per month or per year. So there's a complete change to your business model in terms of how you plan revenue, which has a whole host of other commercial considerations, which we'll get to later. The speed of innovation is much faster when you've got all of your customers on one platform. You can launch new features, hit all of the customers exactly at the same time, and then that every customer is using the latest version. You don't have different operational challenges of supporting different versions of code that customers might have been running themselves. And then, quite honestly, it's a brand new opportunity for ISVs to scale their business, with different ways to offer their services to customers. Market reach expands. You could be suddenly selling to a customer in Australia when you're based in the US because SaaS gives you instant access to a global market. And it reduces the barrier of entry for a lot of customers. If you're offering free trials, proof of concept environments for the customer that you can stand up really quickly, it's much easier for your sales teams to engage customers by offering that. You don't have to wait for customers to rack servers and install software or offer that yourself. You can offer that quite quickly in a cloud environment. And I think, Anthony, you mentioned it earlier, the fear of missing out. Quite frankly, I think for any ISV that isn't already thinking about SaaS, I think you need to really start looking in the mirror, because if you're not innovating and offering these new services and features for your customers, somebody else in the market is. So SaaS or die is it's a term that we're going to throw out there to be very provocative, but ultimately someone's going to come along and eat your market if you're not doing something about it.
Sounds like a T-shirt to wear around at reInvent this year.
SaaS or die. I like it. Now, I mean, the problem though, right, is that SaaS is not easy. Right? There's a lot that goes into creating well-architected SaaS and the business transformations that need to happen as well. So. Yeah. How do you see, or how do you work with ISVs to get started on this journey of even making it to SaaS?
Yeah, so there's different stages we feel about how we help ISVs reach SaaS, and at different stages and rates. So we've called this the Top Gun Maverick slide. So if you've seen the film, so I'm going to let Alex kick this one off, and little Maverick there can take us forward.
Thanks, Ian. Not sure I'd take that. So the I guess with all ISVs, they traditionally, if they started more than say 10 years ago, they've all pretty much started from the same places. That they were all traditional client server applications, and that was great, right? Once you build your as an ISV, you build your software. Once you've actually built it, it's then actually a really high margin business, because every single additional sale that you make, that's effectively just going straight on the bottom line. It doesn't actually significantly increase your cost of serve, right? And your biggest cost from a post sale perspective was really about focusing on software escalation support. Somebody's got a problem with whatever their desktop application is, and they ring you, and then you talk them through solving that problem, and those are probably quite common repeatable problems. But those organizations, exactly as you said, like this whole SaaS or die thing, I would argue I've been seeing this probably for my entire architecture career, so at least the last 12 years, I've been talking to customers who've gone through the same first step motion, and that's to jump to what I think of as like a single tenant hybrid mode, right? So this is, you take your existing product, all your customers say, I want this in SaaS, please. And you go, okay, well, we'll just pop that in a virtual desktop and we'll make it available remotely through the cloud, right? And then you've got either that, or you do client server, to cloud potentially, or a remote platform, depending on the latency requirements of your app, right? And that does provide some cloudy benefits, like remote access. Potentially, if it's a remote desktop, it could be multi-device support. And to get there, it's like a quick jump, and you don't have to fully rebuild your product, right? And some ISVs at that point might start to modernize those applications, break down monoliths, pull out bits and pieces into microservices, etc. Maybe remove some of that technical debt. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, bingo. But at that point, their app is not really, I would say, true SaaS or ready for true SaaS, right? You still have scalability challenges. You've got to worry about patching and maintenance. So actually, you've got a significantly increased complexity, because usually in that scenario, you've got every customer that you've got as your SaaS provider, they've all got their own platform. So every single customer is another tenant. So you have to manage them, you have to back them up, you have to patch them, you have to update their software. And so the customer gains a lot. But as a provider, you're having to completely learn all these new skills on how to run this 24/7 infrastructure operations business alongside of your software business. Then you get to something a little bit nicer, Ian.
Yeah, and then you move into this multi-tenant environment where you started chip away at and converge some of those shared services. So can you have bring networking together? So rather than having separate VPCs and for every single customer, you can have shared networking. So AWS offers Private Link. It's a great way of doing multi-tenancy networking. So how do you integrate some of these features which reduce your overall infrastructure costs by optimizing the architectures, and then start to provide shared services all customers can take advantage of? Identity management, data partitioning on a big shared database, which you obviously do need to know what you're doing when you do those types of things because of customer security. Hint, hint, nudge, wink. Those types of multi-tenant shared services architectures really start to come into play before you get to this true multi-tenant SaaS, where you're running lots of APIs and you're running cloud native services. Shared services are right the way across the piece, so that the customer and the ISV gets a lot of benefits around automated deployment of new feature releases, reduced management overheads, and things like that. I mean, you could take the view of putting your development team into a dark room for 2 years and telling them to build a SaaS service from scratch. And then 2 years later, you hope that the market is still where you thought it was when you started the project, and you have customers haven't all left because they've all gone to the competition. But providing that's not a route I'm advocating. I think this route where you're taking stepping stones into the cloud and then converging on shared services to the point where you do have a multi-tenant SaaS, and that's ideally the nirvana you're going to get to. So yeah,
so
it's a good journey. I think we probably ticked quite a few bingo boxes in that last few minutes with Alex.
Yeah, I'll bring up the bingo card in a second. We actually had a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Can you share one of the most common ISV product dependency applications that rely on this is a lot of words, that rely on modernization to achieve the SaaS model? This person sounds like a SaaS professional.
Question to me, Alex.
Sorry, say that again. Say again.
Sounds like a technical question for me.
I'm trying to just decipher the question. Actually, one of the most common ISV product dependency apps that rely on modernization to achieve the SaaS model. I'm not sure I understand the question. Apologies.
I think one that I would maybe think of is QuickBooks, right? That's probably a fairly commonly known ISV product that underwent this transformation. Another one that's a fantastic case study would be Adobe, the entire Adobe suite, moving to Creative Suite, right? So there's some massive, well-known ISV products that started out as traditional software and over time have completely transformed into a SaaS model.
That's very true. And there's also the without using names, there's the very large office providing software that went that model a number of years ago. Well, exactly. That was an interesting one because commercially they had to tell the market that they were going to fundamentally shift their business model. Otherwise, the public organization, you're going to spook the customers. So that's actually a really big consideration for organizations. I think the other part to this is there's the software that sits on the top, and then there's the infrastructure or platform that sits underneath. So actually, a lot of these, without going back to that particular organization, they provide a SQL product, and a lot of these organizations are dependent on that SQL product, and that's a really good example of an opportunity for modernization of applications. So moving into AWS, it could be as simple as removing some of your operational overhead and jumping into utilizing it as PaaS, or it could be actually replacing it altogether, with other relational databases, or possibly even NoSQL databases if it's appropriate for your application.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Rod Eleuterio, I hope we got your question answered there, at least a little bit. I'm going to take, since it's top of the hour, I'm going to take a quick pause for a second. I'm going to say welcome to the show. If you're just joining us, hello, chats. My name is James Spencer. I'm a Partner Solutions Architect at AWS, and you are watching Howdy Partner. This is our weekly show we do on Wednesdays. Every week, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific, we bring on a different AWS Partner Network partner, and they come on and tell us about their business, about what their solutions are, about how they can transform and change your business, help you out either with their products or with their services. This week, we're talking to SoftwareOne and trying to SaaSify the world, SaaS or die. And if you're just tuning in, we have a bingo challenge going on with, let me flash this card up here. So looks like we've already got about 2 lines worth done. If you hear any of these, go ahead and mark your card. You can take a screenshot of it. Please shout it out in the chat. DM me or anyone else on here, or just get our attention. We'll find you, and we'll be donating a little bit of money. Well, SoftwareOne will be donating a little bit of money to your favorite charity through brevity.org. And yeah, with that, I will turn it back over to SoftwareOne. And so I guess the next thing we can move on to talk about is, so when it comes to SaaS, what do you need to think about? So like when it comes to SaaS, let me flip back over to Alex's screen here. I know here at AWS, we have some of what we call the well-architected framework pillars. And it looks like some of these here can speak to that.
We definitely did not totally steal the well-architected pillar model and then shift it into SaaS skin. Not at all. Don't know what you're talking about, James. What we're going to do actually, probably for the next wee while, I think it's worthwhile talking through. So we've got a lot of experience in this space. We just kind of want to share a bit of that on the chat today. So hopefully it'll be useful to folks who are on board to hear some of the kind of key things that you would think about as you're going through this SaaS transformation journey, and the kind of things that we talk to customers about. So Ian, why don't you kick us off with the business strategy side?
Yeah, I think this ultimately, as I think Anthony's mentioned it, we've all mentioned it probably at some point so far. Moving to SaaS has to be a business strategic decision. You're talking about changing your revenue model, going from perpetual licenses to recurring payments. This typically is going to have a big, shortfall, drop off potentially in revenue. So ultimately, everybody from the board, the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, product leaders, they've all got to be in general alignment about this SaaS strategy, because otherwise, the transformation, the business transformation part of it, it's going to fail. So I think the benefits, the trade-off for the organizations, though, SaaS models typically incentivize long-term customer retention. So once customers are using it, they're likely to stay for longer using your SaaS platform. And with the recurring model, you get a more predictable cash flow. So I think overall, this business model is really key in terms of setting that up as the business strategy, so that you can deliver the continuous improvement and innovation in your service. So that's the first point. Second point, business change management. Alex, you've seen this.
Yeah, I could touch on this. So here's the thing about it. Business, like this whole transformation to SaaS, it's not just a technical transformation. Like we talked about the people and process thing earlier on, right? It's not even just a people and process thing. It's a complete overhaul for these ISVs. Like it's a total mind shift for them. So I think it's really important not to underestimate that entire impact on an ISV if they choose to make this transformation, and it's going to be fundamental to them. You know, you're going to have an organizational change. You're going to have new roles in the business. You know, you're going to have operations, customer success. You're going to have new types of sellers doing subscription sales. Existing teams also need to adapt, so they need to be focusing more on customer lifetime value and customer experience, maybe more than they have before. And if you want to get to that, then you're really looking at from a leadership strategy perspective, it's incredibly important to have executive buy-in across the business. So your leadership are ultimately the folk who are going to drive the change, and they need to champion that SaaS model, because for some folk in an ISV, they're going to be worried about this. You know, humans are humans. And so they need to ensure that, you know, all these different departments, product, marketing, finance, whatever, they're all aligned to this new vision, set really clear goals for them and plan for that transition. And also celebrate, like when it's actually going well, make sure that they're celebrating and talking about some of the success stories inside of the business. And then also actually fundamentally shifting the mindset of the sellers. Like Ian, you've got an experience of this.
I think you speak to a lot of more sales guys than you probably do in a day-to-day. But I think sellers, they need to be selling value rather than product. There's the ongoing value of how they're going to the SaaS is going to benefit the customer and the value proposition that they're going to be delivering. So that ultimately means that your sales teams have to be trained and educated in how to sell SaaS and the benefits of it on an ongoing basis that the customer is going to achieve. And most importantly, I think from a commercial aspect, your sales compensation model has to really align with that new motion, because if you haven't got a sales comp plan that recognizes the shift to recurring revenue models, and you're still paying out big commissions on perpetual license sales, funnily enough, you're not going to see that transition to the model, because the coin operated salesperson is going to continue selling for the biggest reward. So compensation alignment is really important factor on that piece.
Yeah. Is ultimately it's a cultural shift in the business, isn't it? Right. So you're now taking on this service provider mindset as opposed to a license creator, or sorry, not license, sorry, a software creator and distributor. So it's really about emphasizing that long-term success with customers and delivering continuous value to customers, especially given that there's now no excuses, are there? Like, I'm in the cloud, I've got SaaS. You can't tell me I can't have an update now, because it's there. And so that then becomes a real shift in that sales motion to a relationship motion, I think, over time.
I think some of that is very, very critical too. And it's certainly something that we encounter with customers that we work with directly at AWS on SaaS. But to anybody that's an ISV out there that may be listening to this, maybe thinking about engaging with a partner, it's so critical here, and why we have the SaaS competency really comes into play, because it's not just about the technology. I know we've said that over and over again, but it's really about the business transformation that needs to happen within the organization to make SaaS be successful. Yeah. Just the compensation question for your sales team is a huge question to bring up, because it's not going to be the same going forward. And there are going to be headwinds that you're going to face with organizationally. I think it was Ian that you mentioned as well, that top-down leadership is really so necessary here from the C-suite down. Really pushing the organization to move to make SaaS become successful to you. And it's really important that if you're going to be working with a partner, and then we highly recommend that you do, that the partner that you work with understands these business things like SoftwareOne does.
Yeah, I think the other piece of that is, you're potentially ripping up your whole pricing strategy for how you want to offer your services. Because you're in a recurring pricing model. You may want to, do you offer an all-you-can-eat license model as SaaS? Do you want to have it usage-based or per user? Do you want to offer a free version or a hybrid benefits usage? So that whole SaaS pricing model, and then how you deliver and architect for those services really comes together in that product development and piece.
The free model you mentioned is a really interesting point to make, I think, because many ISVs and SaaS vendors, you see that, they look for, or they consider, a really low barrier to entry for customers. Now, that barrier to entry could be nothing, or it could be, a small amount to get customers on board, and then differentiating by, tiers of service or tiers of the application or whatever. But also, depending on we talk about enterprise applications, a lot of those enterprise applications are going to require some form of data ingestion. And so it's really important to have as slick a possible of an onboarding experience to customers to get into that application. Otherwise, you risk, I've sold you the dream, and now you're delivering the nightmare because you're actually trying to get the data into the system. So thinking in terms of onboarding your customers is really critical, and that then touches on what we were talking about before with that customer lifetime value. You want to start them with a really good experience at the beginning, and then you retain them through their lifetime. You mitigate churn of that customer by providing a good, consistent experience right from day one. I think it's very challenging.
What about go to market as well, right? Because once the thing's built, customers have to move it forward, right? You got to get it to market. So is that another area that SoftwareOne helps us?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the it's not necessarily the last pillar of our next gen ISV program, but it's certainly towards that. It's what we talk about in that envisaging phase. What is what's the ISV looking to achieve? And we've engaged some ISVs right at the beginning in that envisaging workshop, and they've said listing on AWS Marketplace or a cloud marketplace is their end goal. They want to do that because they want to be able to offer SaaS across new markets, go into new regions. You suddenly become an international firm with not necessarily having to deploy salespeople into those new regions. You might be marketing your product at the moment to an SMB organization, but some mid-market companies might start picking up and using it if you're offering free trials and other ways of getting to market. So I think understanding your customers, what verticals you're in, can your product support other verticals that you may not have considered, different market customer sizes, enterprise, corporate, SMB, or even just that access to new markets, really key opportunities. And that's where we've as I said, top of the call, we work with over 7,000 ISVs. We're often having conversations about how we partner and help them engage our customers. So that is, channel is also a strategy that they may want to consider when they're looking into how they envisage their SaaS product going to market.
That geographic point you made there, by the way, I think is really interesting, Ian, and that super neatly segues into the second one of our pillars, actually, because you start off, it's challenging enough today being a business in any one country and just trying to keep up with regulation, keep up with legal requirements if you're holding any form of data. And if your market is one country, that's already a challenge. Now you become a SaaS ISV and you want to offer your product in multiple other countries. All of a sudden, that single set of legal requirements you've got in one country is now exploded into global requirements, regional requirements, regulatory things. It's a vast topic, and we're not going to actually do it any justice by digging it into today. And it's obviously going to vary by ISV to ISV, depending on what data they're collecting, how they're going to store it to serve their markets. But the step one is always, as you said, like, who are your customers? So they're not evaluating that compliance and regulatory requirement. If we look at just EU customers, right? So we're based in. Can we use the former EU if we're in the UK? I don't know if that's a phrase we use these days, but we're based in the UK, right? And if you look at the EU alone, they've had GDPR, European Digital Strategy, DORA, the CHIPS Act, the AI Act, all of those in the last 5-6 years. How organizations are expected to keep up and especially within a global ISV, it's really, really challenging. So it's really important to get good legal advice, but I think also to work with partners who have local knowledge, have boots on the ground in those countries that you're actually looking to target with your software, and then there's a great thing from the team in AWS, actually. We talked about them a lot recently, and they talk about the 3 C's: control, compliance, continuity. Controlling where your data resides, preventing unauthorized access to that sensitive data, meeting the local privacy and legal requirements while managing data, especially if it's crossing borders, and then designing robust architecture. So you're compliant with your regional legal requirements, but you also know that your platform is going to stay up. So it's really, really challenging to build that whilst balancing potentially like decentralized requirements if you have to store data locally in particular regions. We actually posted, so this general digital sovereignty topic, we've done a whole series of blog posts on that over the last couple of months. And so actually, James, you could probably chuck that link in the chat. That'd be awesome. And if anybody wants to learn a bit more about regulation and digital sovereignty, which sounds like the most amazing titles and topics to get you to sleep at night, then I'd encourage people to take a look at it. We do actually have a little case study of an example of a customer that went through this exact process, this whole starting off locally and then expanding globally. Maybe if I just quickly bring that up on screen, maybe James, you could just share my screen briefly. Just touch on it quite swiftly. So Brainial is one of our customers. They specialize in this really interesting IoT and machine learning based solution. They call it an AI autopilot, and it's for large industrial operations. And literally, they offer real-time control and optimization of these industrial solutions. So you imagine, like in mining, you have these ore crushing machines. Their IoT devices are monitoring what's happening and then sending real-time control signals based on a machine learning algorithm to actually optimize that. So it increases throughput, which obviously helps the businesses to gain more money, more value. But at the same time, it actually reduces energy. So from a sustainability standpoint, it's a really, really positive message. And that can have an impact on both of those. Brainial, they wanted to position themselves for growth and enter much wider global markets. And so we actually worked with them using our next-gen ISV framework that Ian talked about. We migrated all of their operations into AWS. We built them a new platform from the ground up it was basically all AWS cloud native services. So things like IoT Core, Kinesis Firehose, Glue, Grafana, SageMaker, and I can't remember the other ones, but that's quite a lot of them. And by doing that, it enabled them faster and easier deployments for new customers, new environments, wherever they happen to be in the world. But at the same time, they actually reduced their costs. So they actually dropped their cloud consumption costs 20% with the new platform and lowered their overall TCO. So it was a really, really great story with that customer. And the last part of it was you talked about GTM earlier on, Anthony. So we've actually been working with them on their marketplace strategy as well and helping them open up using AWS Marketplace to get into new markets. So it's a really, really cool customer.
That sounds like a fantastic case study. It's also nice to hear, customers still working with traditional machine learning, right? The Gen AI bug has caught so many folks, but at the end of the day, it's a solution, but it's not the solution for every problem. So nice to see. Yeah,
definitely. I always say that's kind of a running, one of those drinking game things, Alex and Ian, that we kind of have. I mean, not really drinking, but we joke about that on the show. That my cousin Jennifer AI, she always makes an appearance on this show, whether we want her to or not. She always shows up. But yeah, as Anthony said, it's been so much hype lately that sometimes regular machine learning, it sounds weird to say regular, it can be the right tool for the right job. You don't need to go all out, and generative AI might not be the right option for that kind of thing.
I agree. And actually so I talked about our data and AI capabilities earlier on. We have a lot of those conversations with customers, and you sit down and you do say an envisioning workshop with a customer, you talk about the art of the possible and what they want to achieve. And a very large percentage of that time, you go, yeah, we can do all of this with straightforward machine learning, the technologies that we've been able to use for a number of years now. And that's
just good old traditional programming and expert engine kind of stuff, right? It's like taking a bazooka to pound a nail sometimes.
Yeah, Awesome. So the next one I think we wanted to talk about was your work with Neurotech. Is that the next? We want to talk about that case study?
Yeah, we could definitely talk about that. So I think just to probably maybe to tee it up, I'll bring it up on the screen in a sec. I think the tricky thing here is if we're talking like technical, right? Is how do you SaaSify your applications? Like Ian was talking about earlier on, right? How do you SaaSify that application while still creating new features, right? So you've got to break up that monolith and then think about it in terms of each of those features becomes a new module in this new world, right? To bring that same capability. So the earlier on that you can start to use cloud native services, like, Brainio was a great example of that. The easier it's going to be for you to slowly start to pull these various different pieces of your application out. But while pulling that apart, you've obviously got to also balance innovation with stability, because as you pull your application apart, you're going to have to take a little bit of time about doing it. So ideally, you want to find some build with customers, right? Build with customers are the most amazing people on the planet, because they're excited to take advantage of this new thing, but they're also not afraid to go into it, a little bit eyes wide open, knowing that there's going to be a few challenges here and there as they go through that shift. But the benefit to those customers is that they get to be in on the ground level and start to effectively help to push those SaaS vendors as they become into what the future, how the future kind of matches to their needs, and so they can help to kind of influence that. The re-architect platform is all the usual kind of stuff, and I don't think we need to go into how do we do a standard re-architecture of an application on the call today. But I do think that one of the biggest fundamental shifts is as you're breaking up these monoliths, you're getting rid of all the technical debt that you've developed over many years, is adopting API-driven applications. That I think is one of the biggest fundamental shifts, because it adds a bit of complexity. Don't get me wrong, like microservices and API-driven architectures, but the benefits that you get, the stability that you get, the ability to then modify various different parts of your application without impacting others is just worth its weight in gold. We actually did that in SoftwareOne. So we have for our cloud customers, we built our own cloud deployment engine, and we actually use that to deploy all of our customer environments. Say like if a customer is having a landing zone, that will be deployed by our cloud deployment engine. But now we, as an MSP, have to think more like an ISV, because we then have to support that code. We have to support that platform. We have to do regular updates, bug fixes, all of those things. Yeah. There's almost like this conflagration. I don't know what the right word, but we're almost coming at opposite ends. MSPs are becoming more like ISVs, and ISVs are becoming more like MSPs. And so from that delivery and deployment piece, I think this is where we wanted to briefly talk about Neurotech. I think is a great example of a customer that we've gone through some of that modernization journey with. Ian, do you want to touch on it?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, so Neurotech's a fintech that's based in Brazil, and they obviously service a lot of financial services customers. And what they do is they make they have an application called RiskPack, which basically generates credit analysis risk profiles for client policies. So they're taking data in from like 800 plus external data sources, and they have their own data lake where they're looking to apply artificial intelligence against it. And ultimately, they wanted to be able to offer that across all their customer base. So they were a very traditional monolithic application that was built with Java, hosted on an EC2 and Beanstalk. And quite frankly, this application stack was consuming 17% of their billing to their customers. So, infrastructure and licensing was such a big cost to them that it was, keeping the lights on was stopping them investing in new features. So this cost takeout element that we talked about earlier as a SoftwareOne value prop was really key in helping them, innovate and also get back to profitability, greater profitability with the customer. So we containerized their apps. We helped them with, DevSecOps practices around new code deployments. We moved them to infrastructure as code, and then we moved them from into Amazon Aurora into a PaaS database. Again, removing that operational burden so that it can reduce the cost to service these customers. The end result really was that they've brought 20 on-premise customers onto their SaaS platform, and because they're now in a position where they can offer that SaaS service across the wider market in Brazil and foreign markets. So it's a really good example why breaking the monolith leads to increased profitability and more agile operations. So
yeah, I thought of this a second ago, was when we mentioned breaking up a monolith, and Alex mentioned cloud native like services. It kind of just lends itself to breaking up monoliths, is just having that scalability and having everything just be kind of loosely coupled. Like you just mentioned, Amazon Aurora, like you don't have to worry about, you can just worry about the database. You can just by moving to the cloud and moving to SaaS, like it almost it's not going to be automatic, obviously, but it just kind of lends itself, that process just lends itself to breaking up a monolith. It's somewhat difficult to host a monolith in the cloud. I mean, you could always spin up some huge compute like, EC2 server and just run a monolith, but that's not a good way to go about it. Like it just kind of lends itself going to the cloud itself.
Yeah, I remember when Kubernetes became the next hotness, and Oracle announced that they'd put Oracle into a container. Now I'm not sure that anybody was using that in production, but I was just like the exercise of doing it was just made me laugh. It was brilliant.
So I think you're going to get a few comments saying the new hotness. You mean it's not hot anymore? What's going on?
Exactly. So
it's funny. I was thinking the exact same thing. James was about to put it in chat. That's funny.
Yeah. So we were talking about Neurotech as that example, and I think financial services are really as much as, if not more so than many other areas, security compliance becomes like their number one. And as I think AWS, you guys call it, is it security is job one or day one? I've always forgotten.
Job zero.
Zero.
Meaning it's not important, right? No, it's the first. It's the bottom level. It's before you even start.
Exactly. And so for all these ISVs, they need to be thinking in the same way. So designing their platforms using well-architected principles is going to be absolutely critical. I know AWS provides a whole range of services and features that aimed at solving problems specifically for SaaS companies, and especially in that security space. Ian's quite passionate on this, actually.
Yeah, I've already mentioned Private Link. It's my go-to AWS favorite service around network segregation. But then, data partitioning. I've had other ISVs implementing Amazon Cognito for identity and access management. There's a whole range of services that ISVs can take advantage of without having to go to the third, get on the AWS platform, so they don't have to go to third parties. They're not introducing more complexity. And also, it means they can code straight into some of these services via, as Anthony mentioned earlier. So yeah, I think that's a key point. And the thing I like about the Neurotech example is it's a really good example of sovereignty principles, keeping their data in Brazil for their Brazilian customers and elsewhere. So yeah, I think we've ticked a few bingo words in this last few.
So the only other topic I think we'll probably want to cover on this front would be data. Like you mentioned earlier on, any modernized application is going to generate a whole ton of data, right? Application data, metadata, whatever. I think the first question you always got to ask here is it even valuable? Like, if so, how? Like, what can you do with it? Or do you actually need to retain this? Where are you going to store it? What are you going to have to do to protect it? What kind of regulatory or digital sovereignty requirements? We talked about that earlier. Are you going to come up against it? And how are you going to extract the value from that data? So we actually from a ISV kind of data and AI strategy, we see SoftwareOne, mentioned it earlier on. We've got this really strong, deep capability in data and AI, and I think our AI, but more particularly, actually, machine learning integration in SaaS applications is transforming businesses. It's automating complex tasks, helping with decision making, providing personalized user experiences as well. We all know like the buttons that we want to click when we go on a website or through an app, like how much information you're going to be sharing with those organizations. But it's very easy for every ISV on the planet at the moment to say, I'm going to add AI or I'm going to add data into my app. And now I'm AI enabled, or now I'm Gen AI enabled. And unless it's really adding value to that user experience, like truly adding value, not just saying we have an AI enabled app, then I don't think it's going to give you that competitive edge. But the flip side is, if you can use that as a differentiator, it can be amazing. If it's adding to your product, to your user experience, etc. And so I think that the whole data and AI thing is a really interesting conversation. But back to the original point, like it doesn't all have to be about large language models. We've got one more case study I think that we're going to be able to cover today, and I love this one. I kind of want to share this with like everybody because it's just such a cool story. But if it's okay, James, I'll just bring this up on the screen. So this is a project that like we are literally super proud. I'm not sure if that's actually. Oh, there you go. It's come up on the screen. Sorry, that was weird. So SoftwareOne, we were just insanely proud to be part of this really, really rewarding project. Since 2020, there's a Brazilian region now. I'm going to butcher the name, so please apologies in advance for anybody who speaks Portuguese here. But Minas Gerais, I believe, is how you pronounce it. But they were experiencing really severe problems, really driven by climate change, right? Intensified rainfall and the climate crisis that we're all going through, right? And between 2021 and 2022, over half of the state's municipalities, and they got like 800 odd, they actually declared states of emergency or calamity, and 70,000 people ended up homeless or displaced. And you've got all these vulnerable families living there on landslide-prone areas. They're the ones who are obviously most affected by this. And so the state wanted to introduce more preventative measures to help these people. So in response, they developed the very first project aimed at predicting natural disasters and mitigating their effects in Brazil. So this involved key state entities. So they got like public ministry, fire department, civil defense, all these together. And then they brought in SoftwareOne and AWS. And what we did with them, I mentioned earlier on our commitment to social responsibility. We contributed like over 600 hours of service to develop this service, this platform for them, completely free of charge. And AWS provided a whole load of credits to get the platform up and running, which was brilliant. So due to the sensitive nature of that data, they needed to adhere to a whole load of data security requirements, digital sovereignty, etc. And security was actually really fundamental to the platform to make sure that there was no unauthorized access, because you can imagine databases with vulnerable people, information, and etc. are really, really critical. And so the solution we implemented was basically machine learning. It wasn't a generative AI thing. So it was a machine learning pipeline based entirely on PaaS and cloud native components. It takes all this information in from multiple government and regional data sources, integrates that together, dedupes it. It actually pulls geolocation and meteorological alerts in, monitors for risks on floods, dam failures, etc., and then it understands where people physically are in the country and compares that to those risks. And if a named person in the platform is inside that affected region, the solution then identifies them, sends out an emergency communication, potentially notifies NGOs and emergency services in those regions, so that they can then proactively help support people in the area. So the system allows them to basically be more proactive in disaster management, helps them to plan and execute preventative actions way more effectively, and better coordination of their civil defense. So getting humanitarian aid to the right places at the right time, and all of that effectively powered by machine learning and AWS. So I just think that, frankly, it's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I don't think we could get through this evening without bringing it up. Cool.
Yeah.
So I think, Ian, we've only got 2 more pillars left, but we've only got 20 something.
Yeah, we'll probably have to rattle through it. I think, I will probably just highlight a problem that we've seen and mentioned briefly, which was about how ISVs are essence becoming service providers, and they're not product-centric companies anymore. They're now services organizations, and what this basically means is they've got to figure out a brand new complete operating model of how they can deliver that service to their customers. So they're going to need to support infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, licensing, all of those types of elements that they're going to need to do. They're going to have onboarding processes about how they're going to get customers onto the platform. Their customers are going to potentially be global. 24/7 coverage and support becomes a very, very critical piece. And especially if you're an ISV selling into public sector or large enterprises, you're going to have to demonstrate that you've got robust support SLAs and coverage in place, because an enterprise is not going to probably buy SaaS from an organization that only does 9 to 5 support Monday to Friday. So having that support model in place for the infrastructure, the application, all of that becomes a really core part of how you're delivering services and support. Planning maintenance and upgrades also, that's another part of the consideration for delivering the operating model, because you can't have downtime. And if you do have downtime, who's going to support that and react to those outages? If you've got infrastructure teams or developers developers do not make the best support engineers sometimes. No disrespect intended, but it's a different skill set.
Different skill set, yeah.
Yeah, different skill set. So the whole piece around operating model SLAs, the uptime, really becomes a key part for ISVs to consider as they move into that support model.
And I think to that point, the skills that they might or might not have internally to do that is these ISVs are going to have to potentially build an organization internally in order to think about the cloud infrastructure, security practices, the demands of managing SaaS platforms, right? And hiring experienced IT people today is really challenging. I
was going to just agree with you there, Alex. And it's more than just customer support, right? I think support does, obviously it's a huge thing that ISVs are going to have to deal with, but there's also a whole other segment of this which we call customer success, right? Which is a different line altogether, but there's much more farming from your existing customer base as far as upsell is concerned, making sure that they're active in the solution, that there's lowering the risk of churn of those customers, since it is a subscription-based model. Although it's easier to get in, it's easier to get out, right, as a customer. So there's a lot of customer success that has to go into this too, that many of the traditional ISVs just are not prepared for.
Yeah, and the way we look at this is sometimes it's a jump start is what they need. So they're not going to necessarily have that experience. They don't have the muscle memory, the scar tissue, I think we were talking about early on, right? And so working with a partner like SoftwareOne, actually to help get going on that whilst those organizations begin to build that muscle memory. So, people talk about the use of managed services. SoftwareOne provides some fantastic managed services. I'll touch on that in a sec. But a lot of the time, that's a really great way to get started. So you start to move into this space. You lean on the partner to help you with the undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? The 24/7 support, break, fix, patching, monitoring, all those things. And then at that point, once you've built those skills, that muscle memory, the scar tissue internally, then at that point, then you can kind of start to bring those back in-house. Once you as an organization, you're more comfortable with that. So SoftwareOne, we actually provide what we call our advanced managed service, which does exactly that. It is the undifferentiated heavy lifting, which doesn't sound exciting from our perspective, but from customers, it's like super valuable. So we do all the patch, monitor, break, fix 24/7. I mean, that's another thing. A lot of software vendors, they're not going to have 24/7 staff, and so providing that capability for our customers is really beneficial, I think. And then for those customers who maybe go one step further. So, perhaps they've moved into the cloud, perhaps they're moving or operating more in a kind of mode 1 fashion. So they're still, I always like to talk about it as pointy clicky. So if you got your pointy clicky customers, we deal with all of that under our advanced service. If you got customers who then move to that next layer of maturity and they're operating more like mode 2, they're using infrastructure as code, they're adopting a DevOps mindset, they're using CI/CD pipelines, all those kinds of things, then we actually have what we call our premium managed service, where we work with the customer as an extension of their team to do exactly those things with them. And so depending on exactly what we talked about earlier, and wherever the customer is or the ISV is in their journey, SoftwareOne, we can actually step in and help them with that, and just take away some of the less exciting stuff for them, which lets them really focus on adding business value and so forth. We would have had a case study for this, but I think we're almost out of time, so we're gonna briefly move straight on past that one. And I think it would be fantastic, Ian. Maybe you want to touch on the last pillar around marketplace.
Yeah, we've already mentioned marketplace a few times in terms of how it becomes a way for ISVs to access new markets and expand globally. But I think there's pricing models, free trials. We've mentioned it all, but I think a lot of ISVs are able to publish this pricing on AWS Marketplace, and I think with SaaS licensing costs, it's a bit more transparent to the end customer, and you're not having those end of month or end of quarter negotiations with sales and procurement negotiations. And I think the other challenge for ISVs when they're going to market and engaging new customers, especially public sector and enterprise-sized customers, is getting access to the procurement teams and getting on the preferred supplier lists. So if AWS Marketplace is already an approved buying route for some of these companies, being listed on AWS Marketplace gives you instant access into those procurement procurement routes from the customers. So you've got standard contracts. You can put bespoke EULAs in there if you need them. The AWS Marketplace just gives you a sudden instant access into a lot of enterprise channels, procurement channels that you may have spent months dealing with legal negotiations and so forth. And I think that's the benefit. But I think whenever an organization chooses to AWS Marketplace, I think they got to know what they're doing. And it's one of the pillars of our next gen ISV program is to help them, educate them on that process, creating a listing, managing the listing. You don't want marketing promoting something that sales can't then sell, or you end up creating 2 listings and one of them's never used, and it becomes this zombie listing that suddenly disappears into the ether, and people start ordering, but is that that type of thing. So that marketplace operation it's really important.
Say zombie listing?
I may have said zombie listing, yeah.
That'd be the very last item on the bingo list. So that I think we should have a full house here. So the first 2 people in the chat to shout full house, we will be donating to the charities of your choice. So please do give us a shout in the chat. And then Chris will reach out to you afterwards to arrange for the donations to your chosen charity.
Yes. I was going to touch just real quick. My role at AWS, I've been working with Marketplace, especially this year, a lot. And you touched on some of those good points, like having it as an avenue, having it as kind of a transaction model that's already,
Yeah.
Also within AWS itself, we have our own sales teams and demand generation teams. And as a partner, not once, but being listed on Marketplace is a huge avenue for them, because they can find, if AWS sells your products, then everyone makes money. The product, the ISV, the SI makes money, AWS makes money. Everyone gets all around. And having that marketplace listing gives them a really easy just point, like you do your sales cycle and you just point to it, say it's already there. Like all you have to do is we just have to agree to something, basically. Yeah. That's high level, but it makes the whole like vehicle like much easier and much more transparent. It's a good channel.
It is, and also there's a great way to for ISVs to access a wider channel, because if they register as a technology partner, they get access to AWS go-to-market funding and support from partner teams and so forth, which we do recommend. ISVs registering as technology partners is one of the recommendations we make. But the other part of it is the go-to-market routes. How do you engage the reseller channels? So the AWS running the what they call Consulting Partner Private Offer Program, or CPPO. Lots of ISVs sell through channel partners, and the channel partners can issue private offers for those SaaS services and make margin on those transactions. So they're incentivized, and as James, as you say, they're making money as well on those transactions, and the ISVs got an extended sales force that they're leveraging. So, as a route to market, it benefits everyone.
I think you mentioned as well the selling into enterprise as well, right? And if enterprise customers are already AWS customers, there's something called EDP that comes into play here too, which is a spend that those enterprise customers need to reach to get discounts, and anything purchased through Marketplace can go towards that. So if you're looking to branch out and focus a market into an enterprise group, Marketplace is an excellent way to do that, because that's one of their preferred ways to consume that software.
Yeah, we work with a lot of enterprise customers, and helping them understand if they're already buying the software. AWS Marketplace is a great route for them to buy, especially if they've got those private pricing agreements that would burn down commitments. So yeah, we it's a good FinOps approach of optimizing, bringing together software and cloud spend to get the best bang for your buck.
For sure. Okay, so we've talked all about this. We've talked about the technical side, the pillars, the business side. Okay, so how does an ISV get started? We've done all this. We've talked for almost 2 hours. Where do we go? What do we begin with?
Oh, sorry.
Anyone?
Alex, you've been waiting all night to say this bit.
Well, I was in my own little world there. The easiest way to get started is just like when people ask you, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? But actually, jokes aside, it's small steps, right? And we talked earlier on about our customer's journey. We always start with finding that mutual understanding. We talked about discovering their business and technical outcomes, and then to achieve that, our next gen ISV framework. So our methodology for next gen ISV is actually really closely aligned to the SaaS Factory approach. So step one is commonly an envisioning workshop. So that's all about sitting down with an organization, and often they're simply not sure what's the art of the possible. We've seen this a million times. They're going through it for the first time more often than not. And so helping to work through that process with them, for them to envision what's possible, using our scar tissue from doing it so many times to kind of influence that, and teasing out the various feasibilities of different paths and outcomes. And then we dig into all the various elements we discussed today, business, change, commercial, technical, market, operational, all these different things. And step two is turning that envisioning into a reality. So we actually construct a robust plan with the customer. We collaborate with them, with the ISV, based on the information we gather that envisioning phase, to then execute on a strategy defined. So one of the actually great things is that we're a migration partner as well. So we have access to things like migration and modernization funding from the AWS MAP program, which is really, really beneficial. So not only we talked about saving customers money earlier on, but we can save it and then work with AWS to top those funds up to really help those organizations to modernize. And then step three, as discussed earlier, operating SaaS platforms is often entirely new to our customers. They need time to learn, to build experience. We often go on to then manage part or all of that platform. As we're also along with all of those competencies, we're an AWS Advanced Managed Services partner as well. We literally have all the badges, and often that would be for the first couple of years or more while they're gaining that experience. And then sometimes they move those solutions in-house, and sometimes they actually just keep on managing with SoftwareOne because then they can focus on that core value that they provide. Ian?
Yeah, I think just to carry that on to the end, I think you've got to come back to the flywheel type of concept, which is like optimizing the platform. As we talk about moving into that multi-tenant SaaS environment and chipping away at the monolith, it's optimizing both from a technical component. How do you modernize the monolith, but with shared services, swapping out the database layer. We've seen where either moving to PaaS databases can bring operational benefits, but also completely swapping out a licensed database into a cloud native, open source alternative database like MySQL or something is really good at modernizing for purpose-built application needs, and then not taking away the FinOps angle. Just simply optimizing the cloud environment and the associated licensing around that brings a lot of benefit. And SoftwareOne's a member of the FinOps Foundation. We're proud leader in that capacity. It's really that people process tools underpins our managed services and professional services in that space as well. And it's about how do we bring down that monthly invoice cost for the ISVs. And then lastly, we talked about go-to-market support, quite a bit now. But I think it's that educational piece in the program that helps ISVs and become SaaS providers and then get into new markets. So that for me is the whole program end to end is we can meet the customer and the ISV wherever they are in that journey, and there's a value or a recommendations we can bring to help them improve their business model and their approach and get that flywheel ticking again.
So guys, after all of that, is it worth it? Is it worth it to our customers?
You've got to hope so. All that time and effort. So I think we have had some stats that we've seen. I think it's an AWS report actually. But yeah, generally, ISVs that have been through this journey to SaaS have really seen that they get quicker time to develop, meaning they can launch new features quicker. That means happier customers, which means higher customer retention rates. It's quicker to acquire new customers by using Marketplace, and the profitability is increased because their profit margins are higher, even when you take into account running the platform and the people that are going to be delivering those services. So yeah, I think if we go back to the earlier stats, 86% of the software is going to be delivered by SaaS by 2026. I think if the market is definitely moving in that direction, it's got to be worth it. And the ISVs that have transitioned a long way through this journey are definitely seeing the benefits start to come through.
Awesome. Well, that's about all of our time. We filled up the whole time, surprisingly. I mean, not surprisingly, but 2 hours is a long time. So with that, we've talked about where we get started. Is it worth it? Alex, is there anything you'd like to ask of our wonderful audience? Is there anything you'd like to close out them with?
Yeah. So hopefully you've gotten a good feel through the course of this evening of what the capability SoftwareOne has to bring to bear and how we can help customers. If nothing else, maybe it's been a really interesting discussion as well around some of these various different topics. For us, our mission is to reduce that complexity and the friction associated with becoming a SaaS business and driving new revenue through cloud marketplace, right? That's what we're all about. This is what we're here to do. We want to help customers to do this. And I think we've got the experience to bring to bear to be able to help them to do that. What we would love is if this has resonated with some of the folks on the call, please do reach out to us. We talked about this whole program that we work on the next gen ISV. It's really closely aligned to the AWS SaaS Factory framework, and starting with scoping out of that envisioning. That's a simple first step that any ISV can take to work out that art of the possible and to work out whether this is the right step for them and what does that potential future look like. So wherever you are, we've got a quick QR code that you can scan, which will allow you to jump to a page and just register your interest, and that'll let you reach out to SoftwareOne, and we'll be in touch to set up an envisioning session and take it from there. But I just want to say, like, gents, thanks so much for having us on this evening. Been thoroughly enjoyable. It's nearly midnight in the UK, and I actually feel like we could do another 2 hours, but it would be a little.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our audience for listening to us. Hopefully you learned something. Reach out to SoftwareOne. You can connect with Alex and Ian through LinkedIn. You can connect with them through SoftwareOne's website. You can check out that QR code. You can type in that link up there. So many ways to connect with them. Or just to myself or Anthony also. We can also, connect you with them or with our internal teams. So thank you once again. Thank you, Alex and Ian and Anthony, for showing up. So next week, we don't have a partner because next week is actually 24 hours of AWS Q. So if you're into Q is one of our speaking of Gen AI, she's back. One of our Gen AI services that we have at AWS, and you want to learn all about it. We have Q Business, Q Developer. That's going to be all next Wednesday. Please show up. It's 24 hours. I don't expect you to stay for the whole time, but if you can, why not? And then after that, in 2 weeks, we actually have our partner, Gist Technologies. That's in 2 weeks. So with that, we'd like to say thank you one more time, and we will see you later, and happy trails. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you, James. Thank you, SoftwareOne.
Thank you.
Cheers.